Have you ever felt like your mind works on a different frequency? Like you're always seeing something others miss? Sensing outcomes before they happen? Feeling emotions that were never spoken out loud? And yet, struggling to explain how you know what you know? If you're an INFJ, this isn't imagination. It's cognition. Today, we're exploring the cognitive differences that define INFJs. Not personality stereotypes. Not surface-level traits. But the deep mental wiring that shapes how INFJs think, process reality, make decisions, and move through the world. This is about the INFJ brain. The INFJ mindset. The quiet architecture beneath the surface. The INFJ personality type is often described as rare, complex, and deeply intuitive. Within the framework of the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, INFJs are defined by a unique cognitive function stack that shapes how they perceive and judge the world. But to truly understand INFJs, we have to move beyond labels and into cognition. INFJs are not just sensitive or introspective. They are pattern-based thinkers with emotional intelligence, long-term vision, and internal symbolic processing. Their cognitive differences are subtle but profound. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. 1. Introverted intuition dominance. How INFJs see what others don't. The defining cognitive difference of INFJs is introverted intuition, often called NI. NI is not imagination. It is not guessing. It is not daydreaming. It is future-oriented pattern recognition. INFJs unconsciously collect information over time. Small details. Emotional cues. Repeated behaviors. Shifts in tone. Contradictions between words and actions. Their mind stores this information quietly. And then, suddenly, clarity appears. Not step-by-step logic. Not conscious analysis. But insight. This is why INFJs often say, "I just know." Their cognition works in synthesis, not sequence. Where other types think linearly, INFJs think symbolically. One insight can represent an entire system of understanding. This cognitive process makes INFJs highly intuitive, but also highly misunderstood, because insight is difficult to explain when it didn't arrive through visible reasoning. 2. Internal pattern completion instead of external trial and error. Another major cognitive difference in INFJs is how they learn. Many people learn through trial and error. They act, adjust, act again. INFJs learn internally first. They simulate outcomes in their mind before acting. They imagine consequences. They test scenarios mentally. This means INFJs often hesitate before making decisions. Not because they're indecisive, but because they're already processing multiple future outcomes internally. When they finally act, it often looks sudden. But in reality, the decision was made long ago. This internal pattern completion allows INFJs to avoid many mistakes others repeat. It also means that when INFJs do make a mistake, it usually becomes a permanent lesson. They rarely repeat the same error twice. 3. Emotional information is treated as data. One of the most defining cognitive differences in INFJs is how they relate to emotion. For most people, emotions are something to manage, suppress, react to, or escape from. For INFJs, emotions are information. They are signals. They are indicators. They are quiet messengers pointing toward deeper truths. When an INFJ experiences an emotional shift, their mind doesn't dismiss it as irrational or inconvenient. Instead, it pauses and asks a silent question. What is this emotion trying to tell me? Sadness might indicate a value has been violated. Anxiety might signal a future misalignment. Discomfort might point toward an unspoken truth in the environment. INFJs naturally track emotional patterns over time. They notice how certain people make them feel repeatedly. They recognize how environments shift their inner state. They observe how emotions rise before events unfold. This process happens automatically. Just as some people track numbers, metrics, or physical data, INFJs track emotional data. They store it internally. They compare it across situations. They draw conclusions from it. This is what makes INFJs deeply empathetic, but also cognitively complex. They don't simply feel what others feel. They study what those feelings reveal. They notice when someone smiles but carries tension underneath. They sense when enthusiasm is forced. They detect when silence holds more meaning than words. Because of this, INFJs often understand people better than people understand themselves. They are not just listening to what is said. They are decoding emotional patterns beneath behavior. And over time, this creates an almost uncanny emotional intelligence that feels instinctive, but is actually the result of continuous internal analysis. 4. Extrovert feeling as a social intelligence system. INFJs use extrovert feeling as their secondary cognitive function, and this dramatically shapes how they move through social environments. From the outside, this often looks like kindness, warmth, or emotional awareness. But cognitively, something much deeper is happening. Extrovert feeling acts as a social intelligence system. INFJs are constantly scanning the emotional climate around them. They sense group dynamics without effort. They notice tension before voices rise. They feel emotional undercurrents before conflict becomes visible. A subtle shift in tone. A pause that lingers too long. A smile that doesn't reach the eyes. INFJs register all of it. But this is not passive empathy. It is active environmental awareness. INFJs adjust their behavior to maintain harmony. They choose words carefully. They soften edges. They create emotional safety when possible. At the same time, something else is happening internally. They are evaluating alignment. Does this environment feel honest? Is this harmony authentic or forced? Am I giving more emotional energy than I am receiving? This creates a dual process that can be deeply exhausting. Outward harmony. Inward analysis. When INFJs are younger, they often overextend themselves emotionally. They absorb too much. They stay too long in emotionally demanding spaces. Over time, mature INFJs learn a critical lesson. Not every environment deserves their emotional labor. They begin setting boundaries. They disengage from spaces that require constant emotional management. They choose depth and authenticity over endless harmony. This is when extrovert feeling becomes a strength rather than a drain. 5. Meaning-based processing over fact accumulation. INFJs are not designed to collect information for the sake of accumulation. They are designed to build meaning. When INFJs encounter new information, their mind immediately asks deeper questions. Why does this matter? How does this connect to something larger? What is the underlying principle here? They want context before detail. They want purpose before procedure. They want significance before facts. This cognitive preference can make traditional learning environments difficult. Memorization without meaning feels hollow. Repetition without relevance feels draining. Information without context feels fragmented. But when information connects to purpose, symbolism, or long-term impact, something shifts. INFJs absorb it deeply. They don't just remember it. They integrate it. Once something has meaning, it becomes part of their internal framework. It influences how they think, decide, and interpret the world. This is why INFJs often thrive in fields like psychology, philosophy, writing, counseling, strategy, and systems thinking. They are not storing facts. They are internalizing understanding. And once something is understood at that level, it rarely leaves them. 6. Future projection as a default mental state. INFJ cognition naturally orients toward the future. Even when they appear calm or present, part of their mind is quietly projecting forward. Not in a chaotic way. In a pattern-based way. They are constantly asking internal questions. Where is this heading? What does this become over time? If nothing changes, what is the outcome? They are tracking trajectories rather than moments. This makes INFJs excellent planners, visionaries, and long-term strategists. They often see consequences long before others do. They recognize patterns early. They anticipate emotional fallout. They foresee systemic breakdowns before they happen. But this future orientation has a shadow side. It can lead to overthinking. It can create mental fatigue. It can make the present moment feel distant. Learning to ground themselves in the present is often one of the most important growth areas for INFJs. When they balance future vision with present awareness, their cognition becomes both powerful and peaceful. 7. Internal consistency over external validation. INFJs are guided by internal coherence. Before a decision can be acted upon externally, it must feel aligned internally. Approval without alignment feels empty. Praise without authenticity feels uncomfortable. Success without meaning feels wrong. This is why INFJs are often misunderstood. They may appear agreeable on the surface. They may listen politely. They may even nod. But internally, they are checking consistency. Does this align with my values? Does this feel true to who I am? Does this path make sense long term? If the answer is no, they hesitate. This cognitive priority makes INFJs resistant to social pressure. Even when that pressure is subtle, they rarely commit just because something is popular, rewarded, or expected. This is also why INFJs are often late bloomers. They take time to find their path. They refuse shortcuts that feel misaligned. They wait for internal clarity before external movement. And when they finally commit, it is usually with deep conviction. 8. High sensitivity to incongruence. INFJs are extremely sensitive to incongruence. When words do not match actions. When values do not match behavior. When intentions do not match energy. Their cognition flags it immediately. They may not always speak about it. They may not confront it right away. But they feel it. This sensitivity is both a gift and a burden. It allows INFJs to detect manipulation, dishonesty, and misalignment early. They often sense when something is off long before it becomes obvious. But staying in incongruent environments takes a toll. It creates emotional fatigue. It drains mental energy. It slowly erodes trust. Mature INFJs learn an essential lesson. Alignment is not optional. They learn to exit what feels false, draining, or misaligned, even when doing so is difficult. 9. Depth over breadth in cognitive investment. INFJs are not built for surface-level engagement. They prefer depth over breadth in nearly everything. Knowledge, relationships, experiences. They would rather deeply understand one subject than skim 10. They would rather form one meaningful connection than maintain many shallow ones. Cognitively, this creates intensity. INFJs do not skim life. They immerse. They explore beneath the surface. They seek underlying meaning. They want to understand the core, not just the outline. This depth gives their insights power and resonance. But it can also make them feel isolated in a world that often prioritizes speed, novelty, and surface-level interaction. Still, depth is where INFJs feel most alive. 10. Internal dialogue as a primary processing tool. INFJs have a rich and constant internal dialogue. They think in images, metaphors, symbols, and inner conversations. Their mind is rarely silent, but it is often focused inward. This internal processing allows INFJs to integrate complex emotional experiences and abstract ideas. They can hold contradictions, nuance, and ambiguity in ways others struggle with. However, this also means their mental world can feel crowded. Without moments of silence and solitude, the internal dialogue becomes overwhelming. For INFJs, quiet is not indulgence. It is maintenance. Reflection is not avoidance. It is processing. Solitude is not loneliness. It is restoration. 11. Delayed expression of insight. INFJs often understand things long before they express them. They wait. They wait for the right words. They wait for the right timing. They wait for the right emotional context. This can make them appear quiet, reserved, or even withdrawn. But internally, their mind is active. They are refining insights. They are distilling meaning. They are shaping understanding into something precise. When INFJs finally speak, their words often carry weight. They are thoughtful. They are measured. They are impactful. This is why INFJs are often described as wise beyond their years. Their cognition matures early through reflection, observation, and integration. 12. Integration over reaction. Perhaps the most defining cognitive difference of INFJs is this. They integrate experiences instead of reacting to them. Pain becomes insight. Failure becomes recalibration. Conflict becomes information. INFJs do not rush to discard difficult experiences. They process them. They reflect on them. They extract meaning from them. They metabolize experience. They don't waste it. This is why INFJs often become calmer, more grounded, and more discerning with age. Each experience adds depth rather than damage. Why INFJs often feel different. INFJs often feel out of sync with the world because their cognition prioritizes depth, meaning, and future vision in a culture that rewards speed, noise, and immediacy. They are not built for shallow interaction. They are built for insight. Understanding this difference is liberating. It explains why INFJs feel drained by constant stimulation, why they crave solitude, why they need purpose, why alignment matters more than achievement. INFJs are not defined by what they show. They are defined by how they process. Their mind is a quiet system of synthesis, empathy, vision, and integration. They do not think louder than others. They think deeper. And depth takes time to reveal itself. If you're an INFJ, remember this. Your mind is not slow. It is layered. Your sensitivity is not weakness. It is perception. Your need for meaning is not unrealistic. It is cognitive truth. You were never meant to move fast through life. You were meant to understand it. So take your time. Trust your intuition. Protect your mental space. Because the way you think is not common. And that is exactly where your power lies.